Hello, this is Paul Chek. Welcome back to my video blog. Today I thought, since I recently did the three-part series on change and I've talked about many of the concepts that relate to effective use of mind and creating your dreams, that I would give you a little short lesson on tools to sustain your motivation. Many of us have great ideas and we get moving along and seem to get sidetracked by relationship challenges, financial stresses, and any number of things, and can often find ourselves frustrated with ourselves because we're not creating what we want as efficiently or effectively as we would like. So this lesson today really does relate a fair bit to the maintenance phase of change, but it also is directly involved in all stages of change, from pre-contemplation to contemplation to action, and all the related changes, because this is the model of how we process information and experience. So I'm going to summarize the model that I use myself, which is a synthesis of a lot of information. So I'm going to try to keep it simple for everyone to follow, and I think the concepts will be familiar if you've been watching my blogs. So your first tool for maintaining your motivation, which is typically a motivation to do or experience something, is to remember that the highest form of consciousness there is unconditional love, which would be consciousness. In my model, it would be consciousness itself, which is to be differentiated from conscious of. We use consciousness as an experience within which we are conscious of. In other words, you can't be conscious of if there's not consciousness. So sentience means there's the gift of consciousness. What you're sentient of is what you're conscious of. So unconditional love is the same as the 0-point field, and that is the source of all. But remember, unconditional love has no condition until you create a condition. In quantum physics, that would be collapsing the wave function, or in straight talk, making a choice. So we always have the potential available to us to choose whatever we want and to create whatever we want. And all of our thoughts and our images and our ideas show up first as mental perceptions. If you cannot perceive it, you cannot experience it. This is why people like Arnold Patton say you must conceive of life in ideal terms before you can live it that way. What I'm sharing here is that there is no cost to conceive. The act of conceiving is a gift of consciousness itself, and consciousness only has itself to conceive of, and you are a part of that process. So pure potential steps down into what might be called higher mind. Here, Om means the totality of energetic expression in life as this or that. Within the higher mind, we have archetypes, or what are sometimes referred to as pure ideas or pure concepts. Some of the common names that represent archetypes are the lover, the warrior, the child, the mother, the prostitute, the wise man or woman, wise man or wise woman, the hero, the victim, and there's many more if you look in different systems. So the archetypes represent, shall we say, the wholeness or the perfection of an idea or a concept or an experience. The archetypes, being direct expressions of pure potential or unconditional love, are basically the equivalent of, take the face of your watch. It's got a full circle within which you have the numbers that indicate the time of the day. Well, each of those numbers is like an archetype. It's 1 o'clock for everybody when it's 1 o'clock. What's happening inside of you when it's 1 o'clock, that's your unique experience. But we've all agreed that 1 o'clock is 1 o'clock, 12 o'clock is 12 o'clock. So here you can see I've divided the circle, broken it up like a clock face, which is really just to say that 1 o'clock is really just a linear experience of time that is an expression of the totality expressed as a sphere or a circle. So when we're talking about things like lover, child, warrior, we're talking about ideals that we're drawn to achieve. I'm certain if you want a lover, you want the best lover. If you want a mother, you want a great mother. So these examples are archetypical examples of what we desire to achieve consciously or unconsciously. From the higher mind, the energy of all possibility, if you want, you could call that the mind of God, comes the lower mind, which here is the ego mind. So this is the mind of your own ideas, your own concepts that you energize and put life to. Whether you're conscious of how they got there or not, we all have a lower mind. We all have a way to tie the shoe, and each of us folds our toilet paper differently. Even though we may use the same concept, call it the archetype of cleanliness, we go about doing it in our own way, which is what the ego mind does. So this is the lower mind. So here, this is the realm of individual ideas and beliefs. Next, we go down to the emotional body, which means energy moving. Here is where we actually have an experience, which we can't have without some form of a body of energy moving. In other words, you have to know that you're thinking, you have to know that there's an experience going on, or you really don't know the difference between life and death. There would be none. So energy moves down. The etheric field means earth field, so that is the energy template that guides and directs the cells, which is the interface between, shall we say, the body of thoughts and concepts to the body of experience. So the etheric field takes the ideological blueprint that we've created for ourselves within the guise of the archetypes that we're working in, and gives us the experience of how we're processing this within the realm of the physical. I'm feeling happy, I'm feeling sad. Those are expressions of thoughts and emotions that manifest down here. So when we look at this, our individual ideas or beliefs, such as I love me or I love you when, if, and, or, produces an interesting experience here. Steiner was the first one, in my knowledge, to really show what triggers emotional response or the magnitude of a person's thought action. And Steiner showed that to the degree that there is an imbalance between a person's concept and their percept or perception, an electrical charge in the central nervous system is created. So for example, if you're walking outside at night and you see a coil of rope and it triggers off an awareness of the concept of a snake, and your perception is that that is a snake, you will have a very large charge to the degree that your perception of the concept equals I'm not safe. Now, if all of a sudden somebody turned the lights on and you could see that it was a coil of rope, now your concept would switch from snake to rope, and your percept would switch from I'm in danger to that was funny, that was a rope. Okay? So you'll notice that when you know it's a rope, the emotional charge is not very big at all, because we don't typically get fearful of a coil of rope laying on the ground. So this is a very, very important thing to understand, because the archetype tells us what gestalt we're working in, what idea structure. Here, love, I love you or me if. The concept of the lover, we all have this concept of a lover, and we have the perception of being loved, or are we being loving? Are we being loved by that person, or are we loving that person? And the question has got a red question mark, because if we don't feel that we're being loved, or we don't feel that we're being loving and we're aware of it, there can be a gap between the percept and the concept. So if your concept is to be a good lover, and you feel like you're loving, but you're not feeling like you're getting loved, then there's a gap between the experience that you're hoping to have and the one that you are having. And to the degree that that gap is a departure from the state that you have idealized, then you're going to have an emotional experience, and you may even have pain. So the emotion gives us an energy moving, which allows us to choose a response. So now that you understand the basic model, Unconditional love is pure potential and can express itself as anything and everything, and the universe is just an example of that, the example of that. Higher mind deals with archetypes, or shall we say, pure expressions of wholeness as perceived division. In other words, the lover is different than the hero, is different than the victim, but they're all really elements of wholeness. Okay? We are individuated wholeness. All the things that exist in me exist within you as potential to be whole and to express wholeness. So now that we know that unconditional love deals with pure thoughts and forms with which the ego mind can grasp and work on and seek to move towards for fulfillment and wholeness, and our experience of perception and concept produces energy moving, which moves through the etheric field to instruct ourselves to remanufacture our thoughts and our experiences as physical experiences. And this is where the concept of emotional armoring comes from. If a person has the idea of a lover, but they constantly feel unloved or have a challenge with love, and they don't know how to reconcile the emotion or the pain, then their body will take on a posture and a mode of self-expression that is reflective of their own evaluation or judgment of themselves. Am I safe in the environment? Am I happy? Am I whole? And their body language and posture will express the truth to the rest of us, regardless of what they're saying. For example, how many times have you asked someone that you know, how are you feeling today? And they say, oh, I'm feeling fantastic. Well, that's a classic example of what I'm saying. What comes down here, we can see and feel. Whether we believe, oh, I'm feeling fantastic or not, that's an individual thing on our part. But the whole point of tools for sustaining your motivation is to recognize that when your dream is to be a better lover and you're not participating effectively and you're confusing yourself and others by giving mixed messages, I feel great today, then we're likely to run into what I call the pain teacher, which is a gift actually. It's not something to drug. So now that you can see the basic model of how potential flows into actuality as individual experience, I can share a few tips. Tip 1. Always remember, for those of you religious people out there, God always says yes. God does not say no. Unconditional love is unconditional. We put conditions on it with our thoughts. We divide the undividable by projecting our own concepts onto it. So know from the very beginning, as Arnold Patton says beautifully, if it's happening in your life, you know you wanted it. And reminds us that most of the choices that we make are unconscious. Scientifically speaking, the ego only constitutes about 8% of our awareness. The rest of it is unconscious or subconscious. So whenever we're running into challenges, it's a gift because it's showing us largely where we're choosing unconsciously and helps wake us up to our unconscious so that we begin to modify what do we want in our ego structure. We can edit our ego structure. The key word for editing your ego structure is awareness. Pain is an awareness motivator. Okay? Second, what archetype or attractor or dream are you pursuing? Because if you don't have any awareness of the archetype, I got news for you, it doesn't mean it's not there. If you're here and you have an ego and you have emotions and you have a body, you're already acting out one or any combination of the archetypes, because you can't be here unless you are, because this is how the energy and the consciousness itself makes it into life. Okay? So know what your dream is. You don't need to know your archetype. Your dream already tells a skilled therapist what your archetype is, and your challenges tell us what your archetype is. As long as you know what your dream, then you know what you're motivated to choose. So here I'm going to use the model to explain how this can be very helpful to you. Next, my dream is to enjoy giving and receiving love. So right away we see we're in the love archetype. The love archetype is an attractor. So think of everything that emerges up here as our potential to become. Unconditional love is the highest form of love there is. In capital letters, capital G, capital O, capital D would be that which is beyond knowing, the unmoved mover, way woo way, action without action, the lover that loves without loving. So that would represent a perfected form. So we're being given this opportunity to be drawn towards our potential. The psyche is drawn towards its potential. Okay? So now we know that giving and receiving love is our dream, which falls into the love archetype. So here we see the archetype. Now what's your dream? You have to choose that. That's why that falls into the realm of the ego mind. And your choice of dream should have an emotional effect on you. If it doesn't activate you at the heart level, so that your raw creative energy and your heartfelt energy merge, then you probably don't have a dream that's going to have enough, shall we say, attractive force to trigger the adequate desire to convert to will, to make effective changes on a daily basis. So my dream is to enjoy giving and receiving love. My feelings, now we're down here to the feelings. Am I loving? Is the experience that I'm having right now loving? Or is it other than my dream? So if I'm in a relationship with someone who I'm seeking to improve my dream experience of, in other words, maybe my spouse, I want to love her better and experience more love from her, each interaction gives me a love response. I'm either congruent, we're flowing, or we're working things out, and we're satiating each other's needs in relationship, or I'm getting a stress response. Once we have, if we have a love response, then it's as though Spirit is affirming, yes, keep going. It's working, it's working. People are smiling, and people are now telling the truth. How was your day, honey? My day was fantastic. How was yours? So we're moving further into the growth and development of a healthy relationship with self and other. Next, we come to the awareness stage of the Adream. So if the stress response occurs, then we have to, or the positive response, we have to look at the three qualities of the soul. So the circle means our potential of any of the archetypes of wholeness. The triangle means the three qualities of the soul in which we place our dream. Our choices are going to, as they say in quantum physics, collapse the wave function. Once you make a choice, unconditional love is now conditioned. So we have these three qualities. My dream is to love. I'm in the love archetype and being drawn to be a better dreamer or lover. I've had an experience of loving. If the experience was other than loving, I have a stress response. So now I can use the quality of the soul called reflection, which is to look back through your previous experiences and the choices you've made, which would include this most recent experience. Here you have the option to use the mirror. That means look at your own participation and see what you chose to do or could have chosen to do based on what you see in reflection. We can also use the concept of the crystal ball, which says if I continue to maintain myself or maintain relationships with people that don't want to move forward with me as I grow and evolve. In other words, what if your spouse has no interest in becoming a better lover? So the crystal ball technique says, what happens if I live this way for another day, another week, another month, another year, 3 years, 5 years? And a lot of times when I use this technique on my patients, they say, well, by the time they get to 3 to 5 years, they say, I'm either going to die, eat my arm off, get a disease, or something nasty and terrible. Good, you're motivated then. So there's a high awareness factor. When you look in the crystal ball, if you see Groundhog Day emerging, it's going to trigger an emotion in you. Typically, it's going to be an emotion that is not one that, shall we say, inspires repeating the same behaviors, which is the whole point of it all. That's the beauty of emotion, that's the beauty of pain, and that's the beauty of awareness. Next, once you've gone into a state of meditation or abiding or clearing your head, and you've chosen to reflect, you pretty much need to be willing to abide to reflect, because you have to be willing to look at yourself. So you have to be honest. So the point of abiding just means not choosing. It means witnessing, observing, not judging. I'm looking at myself and the way I behave, but I'm not making myself a better or worse person by looking at myself. I'm being honest about what I observe. Could I have been a little more careful with my choice of words? Was I too aggressive with my sexual advance, or whatever it might be? But you're witnessing yourself, always being aware of what another person's needs is, because all dreams require participation to create. Then you can choose. Here you have choice. Now you get to use unconditional love as a gift again. Now you get to go to the archetype of the lover and say, what can I do? What do I feel inspired to do to create more wholeness, so that I can represent the archetype of the lover, or the dream of being the lover, more effectively? And here we have angels. An angel is somebody that inspires you, comes into your life to guide you or support you, because they have mastered that, and it's very likely you've attracted them into your life, and they too have attracted you into their life. What would an angel do if there's nobody that needs help? And what would we do without angels? So the angel can also be an idol, somebody who, so if you have an idol lover that you think is the amazing lover that inspires you, it can be a mentor or a guru, etc. These are all, shall we say, modes of perception that we can use in our psyche to lock onto a more clear representation of who we want to be by making effective choices. So we've covered a fair number of things here, but the real key points that I want to just reiterate. 0, or unconditional love, says yes to everything. The perfection of 0, Great Spirit, God, unconditional love, is available to us all, and it serves as the attractive force. We are all drawn toward wholeness. We all love to be satiated by experiencing our dream. If we design a house and we want it to look just a certain way, when it does, we feel good, and something inside of us rests and celebrates and gives us the energy and the confidence to not only move on, but to see if we can do it even better the next time. Okay? The mind has to choose. It's the dreamer. Dr. Happy is the dreamer. Dr. Happy is the dreamer. Dr. Happy is the dreamer, don't you know? Dr. Happy sets your rhythms set your pressure, and your rhythms and your pressure make your flow. So if your rhythms are all screwed up and your pressures are too high, then you're already getting a negative physical response, which is going to reflect your stress response, which means it's time to abide, reflect, use the crystal ball, use the mirror. Does the pain teacher show up? If the pain teacher shows up, that is a very good form of reflection, because it encourages and inspires reflection. And then once the pain teacher shows up and suggests changing directions, we decide what we want to represent, and then we seek help from those that can teach us. So what we see is that we're always in a perpetual self-reference system. We always have the potential for change. We always have the information and energy available for change. We have the capacity to make choices. We're always feeling our response to those choices, unless we get so numbed out and live telling people we're feeling great when we're not, and we train ourselves to deny what we're actually experiencing, which still leads to disease just fine. which gives you a very strong meeting with the pain teacher in the end. And to the degree that you're in a state of congruence with yourself, you'll find that there's body-mind harmony. I love my life. I'm a healthy person. I sure like to party and do things and step outside of the box once in a while, but my overarching theme is one that I'm congruent with. Therefore, I have a high level of body-mind integrity and rarely ever have any need for doctors or therapists or help, because I let my own archetypes guide me, and I use abiding and witnessing and reflecting and choosing based on my pain inputs, negative inputs, and positive feedback to make better choices. And I rely on my angels, such as my wife or those that are around me, and idols, so Rudolf Steiner and people like Paramahansa Yogananda and Buddha and Lao Tzu and whoever that might be. And they can be my mentors, live or dead. And then gurus. I have many teachers, and I just mentioned some of them. So this is my tips for sustaining your motivation. I think when we realize that we're in a perpetual process of becoming, and that pain is actually a gift of feedback and redirection, it's no different than if you're driving using your GPS and you make a wrong turn and the lady on the GPS says, turn around. You're going in the wrong direction. Well, you can either say, screw you, bitch, and just keep going, i.e. rigid ego, or you can say, oops, going in the wrong direction, turn it around and get back on course. So hopefully you've enjoyed this, picked up a few tips, and if you need to watch it 2 or 3 times to kind of get the model in your head, I highly suggest it. Look forward to sharing with you real soon. Thanks for joining me today.